Hi, just as Scott said, my name is Pamela, and I'm hoping that someday I can be a psychologist. I'm here today to tell you about trichotillomania. And probably most of you are asking, what is trichotillomania? Trichotillomania is an obsessive-compulsive related disorder in which people pull out their hair. This is why it's also known as hair pulling disorder. It is a body-focused repetitive behavior which resembles a habit or an addiction. It is characterized by the increasing sense of tension that people feel immediately before they try to pull their hair or when they try to resist the urge to do that. However, some people pull without feeling this urge. It is usually confined to one or two areas, and common areas that people pull from involve the scalp, eyelashes, eyebrows, legs, and arms. There are two types of pulling. The first one is focused, and the second one is automatic. Focus pulling occurs when people, for example, have had a particularly bad day, when they have experienced a lot of negative emotions. While automatic pulling occurs unconsciously. For example, when you're studying or when you're watching television, and this happens without the people knowing that they're doing it. Pulling results in pleasure, gratification, and a relief, and this is a sensation that hair pullers want to experience again and again, and this is why they continue doing that to themselves. Scientists are not entirely convinced what causes people to pull out their hair. Some studies suggest that perhaps the reason is in genetics, but environmental and personality factors certainly contribute a lot to the development and the maintenance of the disorder because it is often associated with very high levels of anxiety. This can have an impact on people's lives because it can take them hours and hours every day doing that, and this can impact with their daily tasks. Apart from the medical complications that are associated with hair pulling disorder, like permanent hair loss and infections, it is often accompanied by the long-lasting psychological and emotional impact to those who suffer from it. They feel shame, guilt, and embarrassment. In a study where researchers gave people paragraphs about people who have lost their hair due to trichotillomania and others who are both, they found that the general public feels less sympathetic towards those who have trichotillomania because they see this as something that people choose to do to themselves. This is why many people who have hair pulling disorder try to hide it. They would wear wigs and headscarves every day. They would put heavy eyeliner and fake eyelashes and a lot of makeup and try to conceal their condition. They would often also avoid social situations in which their condition can be exposed, like, for example, swimming or going on a date, because they don't want anyone to know that they have this. This can impact the relationships that they have with everyone in their life, like family and friends. It is very difficult to pin down a number and to say how many people suffer from this condition because in many cases it goes undiagnosed, and it is and that's quite a shame because of many reasons. For example, people might not want to come forward and to be identified as somebody who has trichotillomania, or they might not even know that this condition exists. However, studies in the USA show that the lifetime prevalence is up to 4%. We see this number, but a lot of experiences remain hidden behind it. What I have here for you today is a quote by Sandy, and Sandy has trichotillomania. What she says: "For most of my life, I lived in fear of others discovering my secret. I, like many others, carried a lot of shame. I was ashamed of hairlessness and ashamed I couldn't stop. I was ashamed and I wanted to hide it." Sandy has had trichotillomania since she was a child, and she's been dealing with this for about 30 years now. What she did was she compiled the stories of 15 people like her, and she put them together in a book called "Doesn't It Hurt? Confessions of Hair Pullers." In her chapter, she continues to describe herself as ugly, unworthy, unlikable, and unlovable. This is how somebody who has this condition feels. This is what is behind the number. So we know that there is a stigma surrounding mental health. And this made me interested in whether the way that people like Sandy see themselves also has a negative impact on the lives that they live. And I wanted to research that. So here comes the tricky part. What I did was I found research on disclosure about general mental health, and it said that there are often positive outcomes for those people who decide to come forward and to say, I have a disorder. I wanted to take those findings and to apply this model to trichotillomania and to see if people who are open about their condition would have higher self-esteem and they would feel less self-stigmatizing behaviors. And how I did that was I went to online forums and groups of people who have this condition, and I asked them to complete 5 questionnaires for me. I was interested in the process of coming out. What were the benefits of staying in? What were the reasons for coming out? I was also interested in the internalized stigma. I wanted to measure the fear that they feel of negative evaluation. I was interested in the recovery process, and I wanted to find out whether the hair pulling severity would have an impact on the previous 4. What I found was that people who have decided to tell someone that they have trichotillomania feel less alienated. They feel less socially withdrawn from their community, and they endorse less stereotypes about the conditions that they have. They also show higher levels of hope. They're more willing to ask for help, and their lives are less dominated by the symptoms that they exhibit. Fear of negative evaluation and overall hair pulling severity did not differ. Perhaps this tells us that even if you have told the people in your life that you have trichotillomania, you still have this fear of being judged by others. However, pulling-related discomfort was significantly lower in the group that has decided to disclose their condition. Most importantly, what I found was that their self-esteem is higher. On a 30-point scale of self-esteem, people who have told somebody scored on average about 6 points higher than those who have decided to not tell anyone. And this 20% increase in the scores is not to be underestimated. But how does this help anyone? Being open about having trichotillomania is often advantageous for reducing the maladaptive thought processes that accompany the condition. Because trichotillomania is very unpredictable and it's difficult to be treated, those findings can help treatment providers, and they can also tell people who have this condition about the benefits of disclosing their trichotillomania. Trichotillomania has been a condition for less than 30 years, and we still have a very long way to go until we understand it completely. It affects thousands of people who suffer in silence when they don't have to. There is research about trichotillomania and other body-focused repetitive behaviors like skin picking happening here at University of Glasgow. Thank you.
So, thanks. Excuse me. Does anyone have any questions for Pamela? Okay, quite a few. We'll go with, I think I saw the hand go first. So we'll go this way.
Is it only psychological? Can it be associated with anything else, like environmental factors or genetics?
I think the reasons, like the causes of the disorder, can't be pinned down to like one reason. It's often, with a lot of disorders, sort of a combination of reasons. It can be genetics and certainly environment, like for example, where you grew up, what has happened to you, what are your experiences. This contributes to the development, and also personality factors, like generally, are you more driven by anxiety and stuff like that. So it's often a combination of factors.
Okay. Trying to figure out which faces I recognise as staff and then prioritise the student ones. So I'll go for 2 over here. Whoever wants to go first.
I was wondering if you used the language like coming out, both in your talk and in your summary. And I was wondering, like, have you taken from like LGBTQ experience?
I use this language because the original research that my study, this is my dissertation, is based on, is basically researching the experiences that people with general mental health issues have when they disclose their condition. But the original research that this study was based on was actually basically inspired by the issues that people from the LGBT community have. This is why this is the language that is used in the original study.
I was just wondering about that because the concept of coming out has been challenged quite a lot because it doesn't necessarily really describe the experience of people who choose to maybe share with some people, not with others, and the idea just seems very simplified of truth. So I was wondering how you feel that might impact the results of your study, that it's centered around a language that maybe doesn't always necessarily reflect that reality?
I wanted in this study to, I wanted one of the factors to be like how many people you've told and who you have told. Because telling, let's say, your immediate family and telling like everyone else in the world, those are two different things. But this is not taken into account in the study. Basically, the criteria was that you have told one or more people, and I basically didn't have the time to do the work.
Okay, I think we've got time for another question. Yeah?
I was just wondering whether you had a kind of control to test for whether it was more likely that people with higher self-esteem in the first place, or higher, or people with higher levels of quote willingness to seek help, all these things were more likely to come out or to tell people about their trichotillomania in the first place, as opposed to that made them feel have a higher self-esteem or greater hope.
This was one of the things that I was also wondering about, because is it just that people who are generally more have higher self-esteem, that they would want to come forward and to be identified somebody who has this, or is it the other way around? I'm not sure. Maybe it's more of a correlation than causation, but this study that I did doesn't take that into account. There wasn't a question like that, so I didn't assess for that.
And I think we can still squeeze in one more. Okay, it's a popular question. Was one of the others over here different? Yeah, Elena?
I was going to ask about treatments and sort of what treatments are available for the condition.
Trichotillomania is very difficult to treat, and so far, because it's a pretty new area of research in psychology, there hasn't been a treatment that has been 100% successful. But there is, for example, habit reversal training, and people who have this are trained to focus their thoughts on something else when they have the urge to pull. And many people who have this, they can often stop doing that for, like, let's say, a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But relapse is a very big issue for this condition, and they still go back to pulling even after, let's say, years of not having pulled. So there is that, but generally there isn't a specific treatment that can help people.
Okay. Well, if you'd like to join me again in thanking Pamela one more time. And I think these guys will get the microphones. Thanks.